Investing.
All right, here we go. 365 Sports. Baylor tomorrow. National Signing Day for everybody. And, of course, in 2 days, the bowl game in Fort Worth. We're joined by Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades. Mack, we were bringing this up. The coaches get extensions. You had one, of course, with Dave Aranda. You had one that you signed with Matt Rhule, among others. My question is, what is the give and take when you pay a coach in these days millions? And then on top of that, there are bonus structures or kick-ins as well. Is that just part of the business? Because aren't they getting paid to reach those specific bonus structures in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, you answered the question yourself. That's just typical of the world that we live in, right? You have your contract, and you've got what I would reference as guaranteed money, and that's handled different ways, depending upon the institution. That can be just all base salary. That can be base salary plus money's earned for, external things, TV, radio, etc. But you've got the guaranteed, money that you pay them annually. And then, there's a performance, incentive bonus on top of that, right? For reaching, certain, milestones. And, I think where I get frustrated, with some of it is, what's that lower threshold? And, should we be paying any bonus money if you win 6 games, for example, et cetera, versus 10, 11, 12. And so, without, going into specifics, I would say that we've been really, really thoughtful about how we do the performance, bonus incentive. And is that, are those things, truly have to be things that are moving the program forward and, doesn't just make us average, so to speak. So I don't know if that answers your question, but, across the country, everybody's got guaranteed money and then the performance incentive money.
Yeah, Mack, it's not a system that you can really just go and be a trailblazer and try to fight, is it? You kind of have to find your best way through it.
Well, it's not, unless you don't want to have the opportunity to, hire some of the best coaches, in the country, because, that's the marketplace. That's what you're competing against. You're working with agents. And by the way, the agents, like, they know everybody else's contract across the country except for private schools. There's the Freedom of Information Act. They all have at their fingertips what everybody else is making, how many years, what's the buyout, what's the termination without cause provisions, what's the performance incentives, what can they earn in performance incentives annually? And again, those are one-time annual. So they have all of that data at their fingertips. Now, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. And so when you're working with a head coach on his or her contract and with agents, you're fighting all of that, right? So it's part of the business and the world we live in.
So Mack, not much going on this week, huh? Your football team got signing day tomorrow and then the bowl game right after. What do you make of just the timing of the calendar and how all that's kind of worked out?
It's interesting, Craig, that you asked that, because I was on an NCAA football oversight committee, call today. And, I actually mentioned, we've talked about it before. But I think we need to talk about it again, just the whole timing of everything. And, is this the right time to have the early signing period? And you think about playing in a bowl game and even particularly a bowl game pre-Christmas, you're almost at a disadvantage because you're trying to, practice, prepare, all of those things. And right in the middle of it, you're having to have conversations, now we're in a dead period that just began, but leading up to it, trying to solidify your class and make sure that all of that's going well. And by the way, what's really made this difficult is, we're in the middle of the transfer portal window. And, we've been fortunate at Baylor where, we've had, less than a handful, enter the portal and transfer out. But we've got, programs just in our own conference that, are up in the 14, 15 range. There's, some teams, at least one team I know for sure of in the SEC that's lost 20 to the portal. I think the high, we were looking at data today, the high is 24, that there's a program in the country at the FBS level. Right now the average is about 9.5 that are going per program that are going into the portal. Last year it was in the 7s, so it's gone up. And so this is a huge reality. And man, we're asking our coaches, to navigate a ton of it. And then not to mention, what happens if you have staff changes. And so we've got a head coach that's trying to manage all of that, right, and be the defensive coordinator at the same time. So it's a lot, and I just think we've got to rethink all of this.
Yeah, Mac, I would think that, like you mentioned the early signing period, we've talked about it a couple of times, like moving into January seems like, well, you might as well just have the old one back in February because you're only saving yourselves a couple weeks by then, especially if you're pushing it out to, after most of the bowl games are over. So the coaches have time to kind of reset that. I would think that if you really wanted to do it where it was anyway effective with portal and everything else, you'd have to drastically change when it was all together. Maybe a place it's never been, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of cause and effect, right? Tug and pull and looking at the totality of it. And I think that's what's hard. We end up doing a lot of one-off stuff. And I think the one-off stuff and the quick fixes are needed for example, the idea of 56 official visits is what you get, per year. Now all of a sudden we're thinking about, a one-time waiver, emergency waiver, because, we've got, again, there's programs throughout the country, that have a large number of folks going into the transfer portal. I mentioned the 9.5, what happens when you have coaching changes? How does that impact? And so, Paul, looking at the whole totality of it is where I think we need to go. And we are doing that to some extent, but I think we need to include the signing periods. And, there's, I hear, well, the AFCA, the coaches convention is in January, so we can't do it. Well, then let's move the dang coaches convention, right? So let's get it right for our football programs. Let's get it right for our football student athletes first, and then worry about everything else.
Mac, why wait until it's like reactive and not be proactive? The NIL, the portal, the new signing period, which I thought was a great idea. Then all of a sudden now that's even part of the mess in a way. Coaches leaving early because of the new early signing date. Is it easier said than done?
It's easier said than done. And look, that's the logical question. And so, you're asking the right question. But I think I don't know any other way to say it, and I don't mean this to be, negative, but I just think the bureaucracy, the structure of the NCAA, like we've got to find a way to handle real issues in real time, and be able to even be proactive and handle them, as best we can before they become problems, etc. Now, everybody's competitive, and so everybody's trying to find an edge and a loophole, and so it's hard to sit there and predict everything and run every ground ball out. But, I think it's with the new NCAA president, I think there's going to need to be a deep dive on how the NCAA, conduct its business operationally. And I don't know. I think it's antiquated, and we need to get much better at doing it. So.
Yesterday evening, Jeff Traylor at UTSA. This morning, Mack Brown at North Carolina brought up and basically posted on their Twitter feeds tampering, that players are being tampered with or poached or whatever, or trying to be poached. Why would it be coaching suicide if, for example, somebody contacted a player at college X, Y, or Z and you put the text or Instagram or whatever it is up online?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, I think that's a fair comment. And why don't we do that? Why don't we expose? And, I think there's probably this unwritten rule amongst coaches. And then I think, there's also, proving it, 100% fact. But it's got to stop. Like I'm telling you this, we had players contacted, some of our players being contacted before the season was even over. And so, if we think, it happens not until the season is completed, the last regular season game. And, I'm going to say it. I think a school or two within our league has. And so it absolutely has to stop. And I will tell you this, and I can say this, proudly, but you start to begin to think, are we just at a great disadvantage because we are committed to doing it the right way? And I can tell you this, Baylor's not tampering. Baylor's not, calling, and wanting to see if players are willing to transfer to our place. And we're not doing it through a third party in a roundabout way, et cetera. And so, I am proud of Coach Aranda and our staff, the way we're handling it. But those that aren't handling it right, it needs to be stopped.
If you found a coach do that, would he be done?
Yes.
Mack Rhoades, Baylor Director of Athletics, with us on 365 Sports.
Mack, also given the rules, and this might be me being naive here, it seems like a slightly unnecessary crime in a lot of respects, in that players that are unhappy and want to leave can just get in the portal. They have the time to. I know you're trying to get the edge and all that, but it seems to me that there's a calendar for that set up for that specific reason. It would seem to be kind of a silly thing to do and get in trouble for. I guess they're doing it right now because what's going to happen to them other than an AD like you stepping up and firing somebody like that?
Yeah. So again, Paul, goes to what's the threshold, right? Well, the threshold is, whatever we can get away with. And that's unfortunate. And so as long as you're able to get away with it, right, people are going to continue to do it if it's a competitive edge. And, that's the world that we're living in. And, when we talk about continuing to be nationally relevant, meaning Baylor, and, those are the conversations we were having. It's certainly, name, image, and likeness and all of that, but it's, doing things the right way. And, what kind of competitive disadvantage are you when you do it the right way? And again, that's where, it comes back to, we're going to work our tails off. We're going to have to work harder, smarter when we think about doing it the right way. And then, I certainly believe that God's going to honor that. And I think to this point in time, it's worked for us. And, I know it's frustrating for our coaches, and it's certainly frustrating for me, but, we're gonna commit to doing it the right way and continue to do it that way.
Mack, after the football won the Big 12 title in Sugar Bowl, do you feel like in a year's time, because you're about to be National Signing Day a year later, and that was right after the Big 12 title, do you feel like the football program got all the juice it could out of what they did a year ago?
Yeah, that's a really fair question, and I'm not sure, Smoke, if you're headed in the direction of where the class will end up being ranked, in terms of the recruiting class, etc. I think if we hold on to the class, this is going to be one of the better classes that's ever been signed in Baylor history. But, it goes way deeper than that. And particularly in the world that we're living in, so answering your question, I would say yes. Particularly when we think about, are we getting the young men that we want? Not just the stars beside their names, but do they absolutely love playing football? Because that's such a big part of it nowadays with all of the distractions. Are we getting them in that just they just have this deep love and passion? Do they fit, in terms of our culture and our Christian values and all of that? And so I would just say that, the Sugar Bowl and that success has probably, opened the door where we maybe have more of those type of young men to choose from. And so we've been, we're going to continue to be selective and careful. So yeah, to answer your question, I really do think we have, when you think about facilities and being able to move forward with like the football operations building and some of those other things, absolutely yes.
So I know that there's the story, and in fact we discussed it with you before, but the possibility that Texas and Oklahoma may depart after 2023 season or 23-24, whenever that is. Is what's – because we thought, and I think you mentioned it, Brett Yormark mentioned it, others have mentioned that the Big 12 football schedule for next year would be out by now, and it wasn't. Is that what has delayed it because of the unknown of maybe just a one-year deal and then they will shred that up and start all over again, or what?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be disingenuous. I don't know that it's been publicly confirmed, et cetera. So, but there's certainly, logically, I don't think it's a stretch to connect those dots. And I would just leave it at that.
All right. Well, that makes sense because you'd have to tear it up, and instead of let's say you're at, for example, X, Y, and Z, and then they come to your place the next year, they may not be in the conference to come to your place or vice versa. So that would make sense. Mack, we appreciate it. You have, as everyone else in the athletic department, I know that tomorrow they start to get signatures. The support staff and all that's involved in it, how much of an all-out, everybody on board, even with the bowl game in Fort Worth, do you have? Because I remember one year maybe that wasn't the case and you weren't real thrilled with that.
Yeah, I think that, our staff has been tremendous, and just all of the time and the effort. And, it goes way beyond, just the football staff, what our facilities people do to make sure that everything is pristine when we're having official visits, and all of the other staff members, the academics, the character formation, the sports ministry, all of those folks that are involved in official visits. And so it is a true team effort. And, I'm proud of our staff and how, everybody's handled it. And, I think tomorrow will be a really positive day for our football program. And, it's always exciting, whether it's football or any one of our other 18 sport programs, when you add new members to your family. And I'm excited for our staff. I'm excited for those young men tomorrow and their families, because it's a big commitment. And the one thing that I can promise those young men that sign a national letter of intent tomorrow is we're gonna care for them. We're gonna value them as people first, and we're gonna challenge them to be great in everything, not just football.
One final thing. The schedule that's not being released because of whatever is going on behind the scenes with the possibility of what happens with Texas and OU. You didn't say that, I will. When does it have to be released so you guys as programs can start to put together schedules of like games and homecoming and whatever else is involved in that?
So it's a great question. And I just don't see how we can go any longer than mid-January. That's my personal opinion. That's not, anybody else's. But yeah, I just, in fairness to everybody, I don't see how it can go beyond that. So,
in fairness to everybody ought to be a slogan when the new conference is formed.
I like it.
Thank you.
Like it.
Thank you, Mack. We'll see you in Fort Worth.
Hey, just quickly, Merry Christmas to you guys and your families, and thank you for everything you do. And then just, Merry Christmas to all of the Baylor family. Just wishing everyone a blessed Christmas season. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mack.
Thanks,
Mack Rhoades, Director of Athletics at Baylor. We got a lot of things to chew on with that.